Who or what is my organon? Who are my mentors, my influencers, the things, the events, the people that made me who I am, for good, for bad, for better, and for worse? Let's talk about some of these people. First off, my cousin David. When I was growing up, we had two older cousins who taught me a lot. They were real influential. My cousin Michael, he was a political agitator and concerned about saving the world. And then there was my cousin David, was a couple of years older than me, but he was a big influence. He taught me many things: how to roll a joint with one hand and with my eyes closed, which turned to be very important later in life. He also introduced me to psychedelics. He was a chem major here at UCSD in San Diego. I mean, he knew how to make stuff. And I, of course, was his guinea pig. But finally, and probably most important, he exposed me to the best rock and roll music. I'm talking about the Doors. I remember sitting with him in front of the stereo speakers, blasting Doors records and getting high on the music. And years later, I ended up working with the Doors. Wow, who knew? Things happen. Vietnam, Summer of Love, 1969. I became part of the youth movement trying to get us out of Vietnam. I was still in high school, but on weekends, I'd hitchhike from my home in the San Fernando Valley in LA up to San Francisco to participate in these giant anti-war demonstrations. It was amazing. And I must confess, it was a lot of fun. I participated in various LA area anti-war events, including marching aside Jane Fonda at Cal State Northridge. I'm in this crowd. I'm right back there. I'm in that crowd just a few feet back. It was cool. It was fun. It was, very educational. While I was still in high school, I had a series of summer jobs that really opened up my eyes to the world. I'm talking about working in the LA garment business, where I was the middle-class white boy working alongside people of color. I was the only white boy on the floor. All the other whites were in upper management. I worked beside a team of young Black guys, several fresh out of prison, working in a warehouse, loading and unloading trucks. I learned how an oppressed class oppressed themselves. I saw how these guys hurt each other because they couldn't push back against their white bosses. I also worked downtown in the garment district. I was the guy who pushed those racks to sample clothes from the factory to the fancy stores to the buyer's office. I worked with oppressed women of color, mostly Mexican immigrants, mostly undocumented, slaving away on their sewing machines, doing piecework. Piecework means they got paid a few cents for every garment that they completed. This meant they worked long hours, 10 to 12 hours a day, with no overtime, little or no breaks to go to the bathroom, no childcare, their babies sat at their feet, and if they wanted a snack or lunch, they ate it while sitting at the machine. These jobs taught me what's now known as white privilege. I just thought about, becoming aware. It was mind-blowing. After high school, I moved to Berkeley, enrolled in a community college that I soon found out was run by the Black Panther Party. That was an education in and of itself. I became friends with a couple of Black guys, fellow students, and we ended up living together. They were a few years older than me, Charlie Cool and Black John, Vietnam vets, angry, pissed off Black vets, who told me horror stories about how they were mistreated as Black men in Vietnam by their white senior officers, how they were mistreated by white American society, and how angry they were, while at the same time powerless. Angry and powerless. It's not a good combination. They told me about revolution, the reality of growing up Black in America. I had no freaking idea. I was an idiot. I had read about it. I had talked about it. For the first time, I was actually face to face with feeling it. Angry and powerless. It's not a good combination. And finally, I want to talk about my stepmother, Dr. Isaura Shapiro. During high school, after my parents were divorced and both got remarried to other people, I finally got to know my dad's new wife, Isaura. She was a Mexican, a psychologist with two kids, It took me a while to become comfortable with her and her family. They spoke mostly Spanish, not much English. I lived with them during the summers for my summer job, as their home was so much closer to where I was working in my garment district. Twice a week, my stepmother, Dr. Isaura Shapiro, would open up her house in the afternoons and evenings to local Latino families who needed medical care. They provided basic medical care, assistance on a sliding scale. Yes, it was illegal. But many of these families had no money. They were not documented. They mistrusted Anglo doctors and Anglo institutions. Dr. Isaura had built up a small network of local physicians who donated medical supplies, medicines, and helped her by writing prescriptions, mostly for antibiotics and vitamins. The patients and their families would often cram into my dad and Isaura's small house in Lasso Park on the edge of the barrio, often waiting for hours to be seen. As many of them were poor, they often had traded for medical care for their medicine. They'd come in bearing handmade art, clothes, homemade food, a few dollars, fresh tamales, whatever they could scrounge up. Yeah, I was the white boy there with two Mexican brothers and a new half brother and a half sister. And it was intimidating, but it was fascinating. I learned a bit of Spanish. On clinic nights, I would get the patients a little agua, show them where the baño was, and I learned to smile. Smiling is good medicine, especially if you're suffering. As I grew up, graduated college, started my own career, I'd often drop by. Tuesday and Thursday nights were still clinic nights, and I would help out. Around 2000, Isaura got sick, and her body started failing her. She died in 2004, about 20 years ago. I went to the funeral. I thought it would be just family, small and private. But the word had got out. There were hundreds of people there, thousands of people there. And they'd come to honor Dr. Isaura Shapiro, the people's doctor. They were there to honor her and her memory and her dedication in helping those around her. I had no idea how much she was loved by that community. I had no idea. I learned that changing the world comes in many flavors, from stopping a war and fighting against racism to simply giving a person in pain an aspirin and a smile, and it all helps. So mentors, they come in many shapes and types and levels of importance. The seeker is to experience what they have to teach you. Everyone has something to teach you. Maybe it's bad, hopefully it's good. Sometimes it's a big thing, sometimes it's a little thing. And just remember, every person you come in contact with, every event, every institution, everything is a learning experience opportunity. Be open and learn the lessons that the world gives us every day. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.